Hey guys, what's up? How are you? It's Monday here in Napa Valley and it's my day off. It's been a crazy weekend and it's been really fun taking you guys along for the ride. Today I'm just relaxing at home, getting a little bit of work done, and I, of course, am doing one of my favorite things. I'm tasting some wine. So I did this a few weeks ago, you guys, if you've been following along. Occasionally, I try to make a habit out of it once a week at least. I'll grab bottles of the same varietal from all over the world and line them up, pit them against each other, and try to find what makes that grape special in each unique area. I just try to see what the differences are. I usually have a spreadsheet pulled up, I take lots of notes, I try to identify the differences. And as a wine professional, it's really great. It was one of the things that helped me a lot to understand a grape and region and how weather and geography and soil and climate, all of those things, how they affect the grape and the wine. And then of course, it also helps to identify what the grape tastes like at its core. What are the through lines? What are the things that keep coming up over and over again? And then what are the things that make it different because it's from a specific area? So today we're going to be focusing on Syrah. It's one of my favorite grapes. It's also known as Shiraz down in Australia. There is absolutely no difference. They are the same grape, Syrah and Shiraz. I'm working with two classic regions today. The first being Northern Rhone, very classic producer, very classic region. In Cornas, this is Thierry Allemand. This is in the Northern Rhone. This is a specific region in the Northern Rhone called Cornas. It means scorched earth in Celtic, Gaelic. I have to look that up, but it means scorched earth. It usually has a little bit more of a roughness to it, usually fairly intense, so I'm gonna get that open. And then another really classic region, very classic producer, really well-respected producer, just like the Allemand, Penfolds. Penfolds is, man, so synonymous with Australia. They have really been the ones to be at the forefront of technology. They've been pushing the wine industry for years, for decades. And so we're gonna be doing a little bit of Shiraz, the Bin 28 Shiraz from South Australia. I'm excited to see how they fare. I'm excited to see what the similarities are, what the differences are, and let's get them open. Let's taste. So two awesome Shiraz, whatever you want to call it. Just don't call it Shiraz if it's from here, and don't call it Syrah if it's from here. So I'm gonna start with Old World. In this case, is gonna be the Cornas, this guy here. New World is going to be the Penfolds. Already, just looking at the color of both of these, they're both fairly purple in color, very purple in color actually. That's a signature stamp of Syrah or Shiraz. Usually have a really purpley violet hue about them. Both of these are rocking that perfect purple Syrah color. So I'm gonna start with the Cornas. I always have a little spit bucket handy so I don't get too drunk while I'm doing this, because that's not really helpful when you're trying to learn things. So let's stick my nose in the glass. Syrah always has a really olivey, sort of peppery, roasted, gamey quality to it, and I'm getting all of that in here. It's a little bit earth-driven. That Brett that I was talking about 2 videos before us, that like sort of little bit of like barnyard funk, there's definitely a little bit of Brett in this. It's a little earth-driven. It's a little funky. It has like blue cheese smell to it. It's got like a little bit of like a cheese mold. And then instead of going straight to the palate on this, I'm gonna go to the nose on the Penfolds. One of the things I think it's important to understand, and I know this because I've tasted a lot of Syrahs. I love Syrah. I drink a ton of Syrah from all over the world. One of the really interesting things about Syrah is that it takes on a lot of different personalities depending on where it's from and who it's made. Just like Chardonnay, just like a lot of different grapes, but especially true of Syrah. And I find that it can go from anywhere from like big, crazy, intense, chewy, dark cocoa chocolate to like a really light high acid, almost Pinot-like wine. And it's really interesting to see how that grape can be translated to different parts of the world. I think today, you know, we're definitely going to be dealing with a little bit more intense Syrah, a little chewier Syrah. But if you had, say, like a Côte Rôtie that had a little bit of age on it, or even a Syrah from like Lager Meredith makes a Syrah that's from Mount Veeder, that's a little bit lighter, higher toned acids, a little less dense. These are both going to have a little bit more intensity. So the Penfolds nose, right off here, I get a little bit more of that sweet fruit. It's a little bit more floral. It still has a little bit more of that roasted quality to it. And I should mention, I know Penfolds for this wine uses a lot of American oak, so I'm getting a bit more of that like coconut vanilla on here, but it's very pretty. It's less dark and roasted and gamey, and more pretty, soft, floral, more violet, more lavender. So interesting to see the difference between these two wines. It's so fascinating to see how a grape can do totally different things depending on who made it and where it's from. So I'm gonna go back to the Cornas now. Wow. That wine is so interesting. It's really pretty. Both of these wines would love to be decanted. That wine, especially this 11 Thierry Allemand Cornas, that definitely wants a lot more time in bottle. It really shouldn't be opened as soon as I'm opening it, but those wines can be really intense in their youth. I never recommend drinking Cornas with like less than 5 years of age. So right now with an 11, I'm right at that spot where they can start to be opened, but I feel like we're not quite at the level of drinking right now. Like it really requires more like 10 years before you can start pulling a cork in bottles like this. It's starting to open a little bit more, a lot more of that like the Brett, the earthy stuff, the barnyard, the funk, that's starting to come out a little bit more. Second sip, I should mention, like first sip for me, it's just like it's like a whitewash. I don't even count it. Second sip, I'm starting to understand the wine a little bit. I'm starting to see how it's playing around in my mouth. I'm starting to feel the weight of it, the acid of it. I'm gonna let my palate reset. I'm gonna go back for the third sip. Wow, I need food like yesterday. It's really tannic, like intensely tannic. Tannic in that drying, like I feel like I just ate a bag of cotton balls. It's almost unpleasantly tannic. If I were gonna drink this, I would need like really fatty piece of lamb or a big burger, like something with a lot of fat to sort of absorb all of those tannins out of my mouth. This is like $100 bottle of wine, and I'm sure in like 5 years it's gonna be really epically delicious. Right now it's like a little bit painful. The acid's pretty high, and like I said, like Cornas, it means scorched earth. I find that the wines really translate that very well. It's really rustic, it's really intense, it's really earth driven, it's texturally really rough. There's not really a silky, elegant quality to it. It's leather and it's saddle, and it tastes like, just tastes rough. It tastes like it wants to like, it's like a Conor McGregor wine. Like it just wants to like beat the shit out of my mouth right now. I love that. I think it's really cool. I'm gonna let that sit in the glass for a little bit, see if it calms down. Because right now it is so tannic and intense, and it's totally my fault for opening a bottle this so early. It's not the wine's fault, but it's also really bready. So I wanna see what happens with that Brett level. I wanna see what happens with the tannin level. So I'm gonna let that sit for a few minutes, and I'm gonna head back over to the Penfolds. And I think this is gonna be a little friendlier just based on the nose. Really pretty nose. It's so funny. Aromatically, they're so intense. And this is what I love about Syrah. They give you all of the aromats that you want, especially in these two wines. They're giving me flavor and texture and nuance, but they're not like knocking me over the head with density. Like both of these wines are still medium bodied wines, but they have structure and depth and complexity, which I think is one of the calling cards of Syrah for me, that it doesn't have the mid palate that Cabernet has, which I almost kind of like. I like that my mouth wants to go back for more. It's looking to keep going back to the wine. It's looking for the little nuance that I maybe missed in the first sip or the second sip or the third sip. I keep going back because it just gives me so much in that department, and it doesn't weigh my mouth down. It doesn't weigh my palate down with so much density and texture. What I love about Australian Shiraz especially is the herbaceousness of it. You know, on the nose, that fruit was really ripe and sweet and pretty and floral, and it's a little bit more reserved. It's a little bit more rose petal and a little less, and violet, and like a little less of that sweet red fruit that I was getting on the nose. It's actually really reserved and pretty and elegant. It's a really soft wine, but it's delicate and it's nuanced and it's balanced, just so different from the Cornas. You know, American oak really gets kind of a bad rap. And I get it, you know, it's misused a lot, but I think when it's used really well, and it is in this wine, it's used incredibly well, and it's really well integrated, and Penfolds certainly has the winemaking process down. I mean, they really just understand how to make great wine consistently. And this is not a crazy production wine, but it's definitely not a small production wine. So to be able to get quality in a bottle like this is really very impressive. I believe a little less than $30, so significantly cheaper than the Cornas. To be honest, I mean, drinking a lot better than the Cornas is right now. That said, that may change in, you know, 3 to 4 years, who knows? But right now, you know, my vote would definitely be something like the Penfolds. Ready, younger, very approachable. I love to see how these wines play out. It's a lot less acid, it's a lot more rose petal, it's a lot more floral, it's a lot prettier, it's a lot softer than the Cornas, but I'm gonna go back to that and see how that's doing right now. Going back to the Cornas now, a little bit more of that olive component's coming out, and then on the Penfolds, that sweetness is starting to fade, and now it's the herbaceousness is coming through. So, you know, as these wines open, they drastically change. The salinity of the Cornas is really intense, but I will say the tannins are starting to calm down a little bit. That said, you know, I still think this wine could use a lot more age on it. I think it's a really beautiful wine. It's really nuanced. It's really interesting. It's just not quite there yet. And that's kind of my issue with drinking Cornas so young. I like both of these wines. I know obviously this is not about what I like. It's about the differences between the two regions with the same grape. So basically what I would say at this point is much more earth driven on the Cornas front. So if you're more of an earth person, go Cornas. If you want more fruit and you want something that's a little bit more approachable in its youth, Penfolds is fantastic and a quarter of the price. So, you know, right now it's really interesting to see where these wines are. I would be interesting to check back in like 3 to 5 years and see what's happened. It is amazing to see a Syrah and like how different it is in all of these different places. So often Syrah is a blending grape, and I think, you know, one of the great examples of that is the Penfolds Grange. It's their flagship wine that's a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon and Shiraz, and it's such a beautiful grape on its own, but I do love it blend. It does add a little bit of an interesting component to the wine. Penfolds Grange is one of my favorite wines on the planet. Penfolds is starting to smell a little bit more olivey. The herbaceousness is coming out even more. I will also treat Shiraz and Syrah a little bit more like Pinot than I will Cab sometimes, so that's why I'm using Burgundy glasses, not Bordeaux, and I think that helps to also open the wine up a little bit faster. So anyway, that's all I have for today. I'm gonna take some notes. I hope you enjoyed a little Syrah Shiraz lesson. It's been really fun. See you later.